Hello and welcome to episode 4, Unit 5. This one's going to be an interesting one, so stay tuned. And sorry, I forgot to even say the title of this channel. Max and Vito's A-Push Journey. Vito, what is your name?
Vito Girardi.
My name is Max Brownville, and let's get on into it. Unit 5. At the start of Period 5, Manifest Destiny, a term coined by journalist John O'Sullivan, was the idea that America had a divine duty to spread its influence across the rest of the world. This idea was pushed by James K. Polk, who ran for president in 1844 on the Manifest Destiny platform and said that America would take the Oregon Territory from Britain. The discovery of gold in California in 1848 also fed this idea. Many Americans were ready to change the difficulties they faced on the Oregon, Santa Fe, and Mormon trails in order to find a better future and more job prospects in the West after Texas got its independence. As the debate over annexation grew, Congress didn't want Texas to join the Union because they thought it would upset the balance between slave and free states that had been set up by the Missouri Compromise. But in the end, President Polk added Texas to the United States in 1845. Soon after, there was a border dispute between the United States and Mexico at the Rio Grande River, which led to the Mexican-American War. During the war, Pennsylvania Representative David Wilmot suggested that slavery should not be allowed on any land gained through the war. This idea failed, but it showed how tense things were at the time and made people in the South think that the government was trying to end slavery. The war ended officially on August 18, 1948, with the Treaty of Guadalupe Soga. I've never been able to get that, which greatly expanded American land. The new borders went west to Pacific Ocean and south to Rio Grande River, though the southern border wasn't set in stone until the Gadsden Purchase. Stop, Vito! No, I'm playing. After the Mexican secession, tensions rose over the status of the new land. Would slavery be allowed? Many Americans, including the Free Soil Party, wanted to stop slavery from spreading into the new territories, but Southerners were ready to defend it at all costs. What did this lead Henry Clay to do, Vito?
This led Henry Clay.
Oh,
how did I mess up on that one?
It's Clay, Vito.
I know
it's Clay.
I know Guadalupe. I know Gadsden. I know Oneida. I don't know Henry Clay. To negotiate the Compromise of 1850, it added California as a free state and it allowed for popular sovereignty in Utah and New Mexico. Even though the compromise banned the slave trade in Washington, D.C., it strengthened the fugitive slave law that this angered Northerners because it felt it made them complicit to the institution of slavery. Tensions reached a boiling point in 1854 with the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act because it allowed for popular sovereignty in the two territories. It nullified the 3630 line established under the Missouri Compromise. Both pro- and anti-slavery factions flooded into the territory, hoping to influencing the vote that led to the unfortunate Bleeding Kansas. This led to the formation of the Republican Party, who were able to unify Americans who opposed the expansion of slavery into Western territories. Its tensions over slavery's increased abolition began taking action. Harriet Tubman and helped an estimated 300 slaves escape to the north on the Underground Railroad. And it was not an Underground Railroad. It was just her bringing people from one place to another people that had nothing to do with a railroad. And in her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe showed how cruel it was and inhumane slavery was. However, many Southerners continued to support slavery. For example, George Fitzhugh.
How are you messing so much on the names? It's George Fitzhugh. He's telling me, guys, Vito's telling me all these sophisticated words, but he can't get any names. What's going on right now, Vito?
No.
It's George Fitzhugh.
Anyways,
continue on to our viewers.
I never knew a Fitzhugh in my life. This Fitzhugh guy said that the working conditions and treatment of northern industrial workers were worse than slavery in 1857. The Dred Scott case, the Supreme Court said that African Americans were not allowed to be citizens and cannot sue in a U.S. court. Wow. So this meant that the Missouri Compromise was not constitutional. This was a big setback for the abolition cause, and some abolitionists like John Brown went borderline terrorism and took harsher actions. The Browns' raid on Harper's Ferry, Virginia to try to arm a slave rebellion. Some saw Brown as a martyr, and this made people in the South more afraid that the North might use more violence to end slavery. And do you want to talk about the North's economy?
Yes, I absolutely do.
That was so
the North's economy was... Vito, let's keep it cool for our viewers. The North's economy was based on trade and manufacturing, while the South's economy was based on plantation agriculture. This made Southerners unwilling to compromise on the institution of slavery, and they often used the states' rights arguments. These economic differences also led to debates over tariffs, which helped Northern manufacturing but hurt Southern cotton sales. All of these tensions reached a breaking point in the 1860 election, with 4 candidates including a split Democratic ticket. Ticket as in vote. Lincoln won even though he didn't get a single vote from the South. South Carolina seceded shortly after, followed by 6 more Southern states. They formed the Confederate States of America and elected Mississippi's Jefferson Davis as president of the Confederacy. Going into the war, the North had significant advantages. They had a larger population control over the U.S. Navy and the banks, which meant access to money. They also had more infrastructure like railroads and more farmland for growing food. However, the South managed to sustain the war effort for years because of their determination to keep slavery. They also had better military leadership with experienced generals such as Robert E. Lee. Ah!
It's okay.
There are a few key events you want to know from the Civil War. First, it's Fort Sumter, the official start to the war. Next is Antietam. The Confederate loss here discouraged and 8, the Battle of Gettysburg were considered the turning point of the war and officially ended Southerner attempts to invade the North. The Atlanta campaign is also significant because General Sherman used total war to destroy the Southern morale and supplies, weaving a path of destruction from Atlanta to Savannah. And finally, Appomattox, where the Confederacy was forced to surrender. Lincoln's leadership was instrumental in the victory he was determined to restore the Union after. Fort Sumter, Lincoln approved the draft of 75,000 troops, and as the war continued, the Conscription Act was passed in 1863 to draft additional troops. As with previous presidents, Lincoln limited civil liberties during the war. Can you give us an example, Vito?
Well, for example, he suspended habeas corpus, which meant that anyone rebelling or interfering with the war effort could be arrested and denied legal rights. This was especially controversial in border states like Maryland after the Union won the war. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all slaves in the United States. This did not end slavery in America, but it made the war about it, and it let African Americans join the Union Army. 407 years ago, Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address helped change the purpose of the war by promoting the ideas of freedom and equality. Others, including soldiers and civilians, were inspired by the speech to keep supporting the war effort. Lincoln had a plan to rebuild the Union after the war, but he was popped by John Wilkes Booth before he could carry it out. So the government had the hard job of putting the country back together after the war was over. But Lincoln's first plan was to quickly bring the states together by only needing 10% of the votes to swear loyalty to the Union. And his replacement was Johnson. And you want to talk about Johnson's plan?
Do I really want to talk about Johnson's plan?
I don't know.
I guess we will. Johnson's plan called for the southern states to end their separation and end slavery, but it also let many Confederate leaders go free. Radical Republicans, on the other hand, wanted to punish former Confederate leaders and give freed slaves full citizenship and voting rights, which I don't have. Oh my god. They used armed forces in southern states to carry out their rebuilding plans, and there were many wins. During Reconstruction, the Freedmen's Bureau helped newly freed slaves get their lives back on track by giving them basic needs like foods, clothes, and medical care. It also built schools. The Reconstruction Amendments were also passed. The 13th Amendment ended slavery, the 14th defined citizenship, and the 15th gave men all the right to vote regardless of race. This made it possible for many African Americans to be elected to public office, such as hire rebels. However, there were also many failures. During Reconstruction too, many white Southerners fought against the changes that were being made. They did this by passing restrictive Jim Crow laws that allowed segregation and by using poll taxes and literacy tests to keep freed slaves from voting. At the same time, white supremacist groups like the KKK grew and became more violent. In the end, rebuilding ended with the 1877 agreement. After a close election, the House chose Rutherford B. Hayes in return for pulling federal troops out of the South. Okay. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening to this amazing episode of Unit 5. I'm sorry, me and Vito are a little bit silly after all these episodes filming.
Yeah.
But please stand with us because we'll be going through Unit 6, 7, and 8 and 9. And they are going to be fantastic. Once again, thanks for listening. Vito, you got anything to say?
Well, stay tuned, guys, because we're going to get into the Gilded Age and some pretty amazing things happen in the Gilded Age. So long.